I have to say, I love all of our worship associates, but Evan Yunker just has a way of speaking truth, because those clinching moments are moments that I am very familiar with. And just as I saw my name on the screen behind you, I had one of those moments, because we are at 11, and there's no way I'm going to talk for 30 minutes. My grandfather, who was a Baptist deacon, is probably very upset in his grave about that. 30 minutes of pontification is every Baptist minister's dream. But I will say that the universe has an odd way about it. And today, as I drove in to this beautiful campus to be with an amazing group of people who serve our community well, I received that phone call, and it was one out of caution that COVID had tested positive in a group, and the group had been unmasked the whole day, and they just didn't feel comfortable exposing our community. And I appreciate that deeply. And at that moment, I realized there was no plane. The title of Reverend Aya's sermon was "As We Build the Plane," and I'm like, but there's no plane. I don't even have the blueprints for a plane. And then I got here and I spoke to everyone involved, and a calm came over us. And we realized that change is an inevitable aspect of life. Sam Cooke said, change is gonna come, and I think that that is true. We profess ourselves to be a living tradition, one that acknowledges that change is inevitable. And yet yesterday in the group that Linda spoke about in her offertory, we discovered through the wisdom of the participants in that group that there's a tension in that phrase. We call ourselves a living tradition. It's living in that we acknowledge that change is inevitable and we need to be moving forward. We need to be embracing things that will keep our dreams and hopes alive. And then, as Les Polgar put it, there's tradition. And that tradition is something that we value. It's something that we want to be stable enough that we can pass on to future generations. And that tension is real, a living tradition. It was an excellent conversation, and it had aspects to it I never even thought of, that concept of living tradition. I love change. Change is inevitable. I'm pretty comfortable with change in general. In general universe. I'm not welcoming anything else. I'm just saying if it happens, I tend to be able to deal with it. But there is this tension. And so how do we deal with that? How do we reconcile that? And the group really provided a huge amount of wisdom to me in that they all pretty much, in one way or another, insisted that it is in finding our integrity and living into it. So that really means, for me, that we embrace our values of this tradition, not the words, not the sentences, not even the statements, but rather the values behind there. And if things are in integrity with one another, then we can maintain that it is a valuable change. It is a change that will do what it needs to do. Anchor us in tradition, but yet move us forward. But it's scary and it's uncomfortable. But we hold a value of deep interconnectedness. And that interconnectedness makes us feel responsible for not just ourselves, but other people's well-beings. That means that when we're faced with change, we can't just think about how those changes or our actions will affect ourselves, but we have to. We are called by our values to think about how it will affect not just those closest to us, but those people who may not even be in the room at the time the decision is made. It inspires us to think about a world or a community that we want to change for future generations and how our decisions might shape all of that. In ministry, we have a phrase, liminal space. I'll be honest, I despise that word. It is that, well, that's not true. I despise the feeling around being in that liminal space. It's a space of, for me, discomfort, where I'm unsure. Like Evan said, it's that space that gives you pause, that makes you take a small breath inward and just take a beat. That liminal space, I don't know what to do in that space all the time. And yet, our faith centers love as a common value among everything else we hold. And if I really, really think about it and allow love to be the heart of this faith movement, of my beliefs, those things that I hold important, then maybe love has a way of showing us how to change, showing us that if we root ourselves in those foundations, in that love that is central to our particular faith tradition, we can hold on to who we are, but make space for the emergence of things that are new. I think love is an invitation. It's an invitation to listen to one another in these spaces, to being open to new ideas and perspectives, to accept and acknowledge that we may not have all the answers. And that is a hard thing for many of us to do. Some, me included, have built careers of being an expert in whatever, loving how it feels to be in the room when you speak and are heard and listened to. But that's not the kind of love we're striving for. We're striving for something different. We're striving for a love that allows us to have difficult conversations, to truly hear one another's perspectives and experiences, even if they are in direct opposition to our own lived experiences. I believe that remaining true to that central love value is having the courage to lean in to our calls of action. A faith that, like ours, can't just be something internal. This is great to come together in our ways on Sundays and be with one another, on Saturdays and learning about values and changes that are coming. But that's not enough. Our faith calls us into action. We have to be the love we want to see. And we do, I believe, a great job here at MDUUC in entering into our greater Contra Costa community and helping to serve those in need. It's something that I pride ourselves on, and I hope that we do more of in the future. But it requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to admit we are not the experts in the room. It requires us to listen to people who are living the issues that we are hoping to address. We are in an ever-changing world, and it's so tempting and so comforting to cling to all those things that are familiar and comfortable, resisting all those changes, deeply wanting to maintain the status quo. It is something that I can appreciate from those who may not share my particular philosophical stent on justice issues in the world. I get it. Comfort is a very enticing drug. But this approach ultimately leads us to stagnation and decay. I think that we should instead embrace the tension that comes in our living tradition. but allow love to guide us as we navigate all those complexities of change. As we embrace change and strive for growth, I really do feel it's important to acknowledge that not all changes are positive. Not all of them may be beneficial to us directly. Some changes have unintended consequences, or in many cases, may perpetuate systems of harm or oppression. And that's why it's crucial that we listen to the people we are trying to serve. We listen to marginalized voices. We take their experiences and lived realities into account. We have to be willing to examine our own biases and blind spots and to actively work towards dismantling all of those systems of oppression. We are not free until all of us are free. I believe that embracing love and remaining true to all of our UU values really could radically change the world. And this is where I sometimes get into trouble, although I have a friend, I'm looking at her right now, Sue Polgar. I love evangelizing our faith. Our faith has a message of hope, a message of transformation, a radical message of love. I don't think we should keep that under a bushel. Every time I engage in interfaith work, I want and need to be able to tell people about our faith. I want them to understand that our umbrella is one that is large, one that we hope is ever growing. Change is not unique to our community, to this congregation, or even to our association itself. Change is inevitable. Change is gonna come. And if we were willing to tell more people about our faith, we have a blueprint, if you will, to actually help change to come to greater places, greater systems, greater, more diverse networks. I know that change can be difficult. I know that it can be scary, but it is necessary. It's necessary if we want to create a more just and equitable world based in compassion. The choir said today, we have rules that we've made, but we need to break them. And I think that verse, that statement in their song is very profound. We do have rules. Those rules may have served us well, but the rules need to be broken. It's one way that we can represent letting go of the past and making space for us to move into a collective new direction. It is an act that simultaneously honors the rules and the roads that came before us, but also allows us the opportunity to create something new. And I believe we need to do all of this with love as our guide, so that we can be rooted in compassion, kindness, respect for everyone. So my simple question for today has nothing to do with planes. But are you ready to break the rules that we have made?